the vast majority of stablecoin growth is basically in the future. It's going to be an absolute kind of war to really win this at massive scale.
I do think it is interesting to think it's easy to fall into that trap of, oh, we're taking on Stripe now, or our competition is what's currently in front of us. When this is a very long game, I'm sure if Tether thought that way, they would probably limit themselves to thinking about just kind of going up against USDC. But credit to Paolo, credit to the whole Tether team. The idea of kind of leaning into, again, not just what is on the market, but where the market is going. And we continue to see that play out with the idea of stablecoins and these battles getting a little bit, I guess they're not battles, it's outright war. Hello and welcome everybody into another episode of Coinage. I'm your host, Zach Guzman, coming to you live from our Brooklyn studios here in New York City as we are watching Bitcoin rise to kick off the week as gold hits a new record high above 3,800 on fears of a government shutdown. There's a nice little Bob's Burgers ad. But, you know, Reuters has a lot of ads these days. But we're going to dig into all of this in today's show, looking at where crypto goes from here and what is historically one of the strongest periods for crypto in the month of October, moving ahead into Q4. A lot to look forward to as we close 2025. And with good reason, a lot of that enthusiasm spilling over from stablecoins. We're going to dig into that as well as Tether's monster round comes together at a potential $500 billion valuation. That one was out last week, but worth chatting again when we dig into that. And also want to bring up the Ethereum price charts over here as well, because we were chatting with Tom Lee out in Korea. It was nice out there. I want to bring up the ETH chart too, because still holding firm on that 10 to 12K price target to wrap up the year. That'd be about a three-bagger in terms of where ETH's price could go. If you listen to Tom Lee, we're going to have that interview, our stage fireside from Korea Blockchain Week coming out sometime this week. We don't know when we're going to get it from the organizers, but we're going to have it at some point for you. And we will have that on Coinage in full. But a very fascinating conversation with Tom Lee. Of course, this week, though, let's get us back in present day. This week, there's a lot going on. Where's our rundown, Texas? Where is it? We're back. Texas and I are recovering from a wedding this weekend together. So we're all over the place. We don't know what's going on. But, of course, this week in D.C. will be very interesting to watch it all play out because Republicans and Democrats going back and forth. Potential shutdown looming in D.C. Basically, you got Democrats trying to use what leverage they got over President Trump, and Republicans really trying to push some healthcare spending pieces. And potentially you could see things by Wednesday, essentially, is really when the government could run out of funding, 12:01 a.m. on Wednesday, unless Trump and Democrats can come together to reach an agreement. So going to have to deal with that this week when we think about volatility in the market. A lot to see whether or not they can actually get that deal done. But of course, let's just back up a little bit and think about where we are in crypto too, because there's been a lot of good research coming out of Fundstrat, as there always is. When we think about what signals might be showing in Texas, maybe we start with the gold one. Because as we said off the top of the show, gold now sitting above 3,800. This is kind of what Sean Farrell, of course, Tom Lee's crypto research head at Fundstrat has been talking about. Generally, the moves in gold predate the nice rallies we've seen from crypto. And really, from a macro perspective, nothing has changed all that much. I mean, we're going to dig into a little bit of like the more in the weeds crypto stuff, at least in terms of like flows for stablecoins in a minute. But when you back up and just think about what the macro picture is telling you in terms of where gold's price is going, according to them, everything's still steady as she goes. And considering that gold has now reached a new all-time high today on Monday, then this chart, I think, is important to highlight for why people are excited about Q4. Now, in terms of October, October being a very strong month for crypto, it's also worth pointing out their other piece of research, which is that not only is Up-tober really strong, but the beginning part of all of these months has been very strong. Fundstrat put together all the data looking at trading days. I think this goes back to January 2024. And basically, you can see there on the chart, it's the back half of the month, no matter which month, that you've really had to worry about. And so I'm thinking, if you're sitting there watching this, maybe it's not surprising that we have a very strong Monday, because generally the data shows that the beginning of the month has been stronger over the last couple of years. And October is historically very strong. So if we're going to have a week back of October, and I'm not even saying that we will, I don't think Sean is saying that we will either, but historically, front half of the month, very strong. Historically, October, very strong. So historically, a double fact there might be that the front half of October could be very strong, ladies and gents. And so that's why I think if you put all the pieces together, we don't know what we're going to get in terms of volatility coming through this week. Of course, shutdown week, who knows? But in general, the data itself does seem to be setting up for a very strong October, as we all potentially, I think I speak for everybody here, at least in coinage, we want to see that, especially if we go back to the ETH chart and just think about where our funds still are at. And of course, that's what we heard from Tom Lee. So we'll bring you that interview once we have it, and for exactly why he is so bullish on the idea of where ETH is going to close 2025 at 10 to 12K. Of course, you don't really need to wait for the interview. If you just want to read what we got from Bitmine out this morning, as they gave the latest update on their Ethereum treasury holdings, slightly larger than Coinage's, as they are now by far the largest Ethereum DAT, now with cash holdings and crypto holdings north of $11.6 billion. So just a little bit bigger than us, but still on the path to getting to the point where they control 5% of all the outstanding ETH. And if you listen to the quote that Tom Lee put out, it again is still centered around the same thing that he's been bullish on all year. And the reason why, as he told us before on Coinage, why he got into this game. He says, as we enter the final months of 2025, the two supercycle investing narratives remain AI and crypto, and both require neutral public blockchains. Naturally, Ethereum remains the premier choice given its high reliability and 100% uptime. These two powerful macro cycles will play out over decades since ETH's price is a discount to the future. This bodes well for the token and the reason Bitmine's primary treasury asset is ETH. Now, of course, we've heard that from Tom before. We're going to hear it again when we put the interview out. But I do want to highlight why it seems that it is a stable supercycle. And one of those things, Texas, I don't actually know if we have this on the stable surge part of the show, but I did send you one chart. I think we have it. Maybe we have it. Of where stables are right now, because it has been pretty wild to kind of step back and think about that happening. Yes, this is the one. Big surges in terms of stables being issued. Of course, it's kind of a nice proxy. Out of all the things to look at, you can look at it like a Bitcoin ETH premium on Coinbase versus other exchanges out there, generally where a proxy for where U.S. enthusiasm is, generally a strong indicator. The other big strong indicators are what's happening with stablecoins, more money flowing into the space, and the top issuers have been printing more stables left and right. Obviously, perhaps not surprising, Tether and USDC, but also Athena playing a little bit of a catch-up when you look at this data over the last few weeks. And I don't think that's slowing down anytime soon, since you got Tempo, you got Plasma. When I was out there in Korea on the same panel as one of Circle's executives on the panel, we had just seen the headline come out from Tether's latest round that it could be as large as $500 billion that we could see attached to Tether. And then some other reporting saying that it could be BlackRock, it could be ARK attached to that round. And that's kind of how Tether's going to get this done to reach a $500 billion valuation. You know, we were out at Tether's USAT launch here in New York on the Friday before Korea Blockchain Week. I can attest, Kathy Wood was there. BlackRock, sorry, not BlackRock, SoftBank, I should say SoftBank. I don't know if I misspoke, but SoftBank being part of this, potentially to see Tether reach $500 billion. It's going to be one of the largest companies in the world, and with good reason. I think, one of the things is for as long as Tether's held the crown, people have been wondering, when are they going to be dethroned? How is it possible that some company out there that's just making digital dollars, when anyone can make digital dollars, has stayed at top the field for so long? And of course, you got to hand it to the Tether team for the way that they've also been investing in this space and trying to figure these things out as well. Because, again, it's not just things that happen here in the US. It's also around the world, and how Tether has been able to build up distribution in a lot of these countries. And also the bets they want to make on other plays. And so that, I think, is interesting as we see the rise of Plasma as they got off the ground. As Tether is a backer of what they've been doing. And it was interesting to see the leader at Plasma. He was just on the roll-up. This will fit into what we're announcing later on in the show. Shout out to the roll-up. Love what Andy and Robbie have been doing over there. Good dudes at the roll-up. And we saw the CEO, leader of things over at Plasma, on the roll-up, talking about the competition here. Just want to play a little bit of what we heard from him, because I do think it sets up kind of where we're at in the stablecoin discussion and why we are continuing to see such fervor in this battle to beat top dog. Take a listen to what he said.
You do have a kind of massively expanding pie, and so I truly think that like the vast majority of stablecoin growth is basically in the future and not in the past. And I think that that's kind of a massive component of how we think about competition. It's going to be an absolute kind of war to really win this at massive scale.
It's an absolute war to win this at massive scale. Of course, Stripe, one of the payment giants, entering the space as well. This is interesting. Definitely recommend watching the interview with the roll-up and Paul there, because I do think it is interesting to think it's easy to fall into that trap of, oh, we're taking on Stripe now, or our competition is what's currently in front of us. When this is a very long game, I'm sure if Tether thought that way, they would probably limit themselves to thinking about just kind of going up against USDC. But credit to Paolo, credit to the whole Tether team, Bo Hines as well now over there. The idea of kind of leaning into, again, not just what is on the market, but where the market is going. And we continue to see that play out with the idea of stablecoins and these battles getting a little bit, I guess they're not battles anymore, it's outright war, as you heard Paul say there. And so, I don't know, I think it'll be very interesting to see whether or not, because everyone is now generally on the same page, as well as Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent saying we will see stables and the market cap overall of stables hit trillions in the not so distant future. And so the question becomes, which one of these companies or which project will start to capitalize on that growth? And it's not just going to be Tether. And so I think it is interesting to see which projects Tether and the like want to support and what happens there. Perhaps not too surprising, by the way, that after we did see Tether potentially locking in a $500 billion valuation, and we did see Circle. I was waiting for this. I was like, what's going on with Circle's price? That we are seeing Circle catch a little bit of a bid in today's session. And over the last few days, I should note, not just today's session, but pretty expected to see Circle enjoying a nice little 8% rally. Just as the entire stablecoin space heats up. And of course, as we know, Circle, one of the best proxies as far as publicly traded companies go. We're going to chat a little bit more, I think, about that too, because as we said on a few other shows prior, looking at how some of those IPOs have held up and whether or not that enthusiasm lets us know how much more steam we got in this Q4 rally. One of those that did go public recently is Gemini, and I've just been noticing that this has been slipping a little bit. It hasn't been as hot. I mean, it had a nice beginning to things on day one, but since then, kind of weak. So That could just be Gemini specific. I don't want to read too much into that, but it is interesting to kind of think about Circle versus Gemini in the way that those shape up. But I'm mixing metaphors here, Texas. These are two very different things. I'm talking about stable coins, which is very different than, of course, what we're talking about at Gemini. But nonetheless, to pair those two things from what Tom Lee says is happening in a super cycle of stables and what we're seeing play out with the war in stables, very interesting, and certainly, I think, one of the, as boring as stablecoins are, one of the most fascinating pieces of crypto right now, and clearly seeing a bunch more money still flow into those. So nonetheless, very exciting, very intriguing. Also, want to bring attention to another kind of narrative that's always been out there for as long as I've been in crypto. One of the big questions has been not just who's going to win the stablecoin war, but who's going to win the old systems? Who's going to bring Swift on chain? Who's going to bring the way that we send money across borders right now? Mostly, if you're in the dollar-facing world, it's Swift. It's Swift. That is what we use. That's how banks move the money around the world. And though it's kind of like the Holy Grail. It's like, which blockchain was ever going to work with Swift? For a long time, a lot of people who were excited about Ripple always thought their day would come. But very interesting to see the headline come across that it'll be Linea working with Swift, or at least Swift to work with Linea for a prototype on cross-border payments. And that was the headline we got. And pretty interesting to think about that, just because of, again, how big Swift is, how big that name is, and how big this narrative has been. Maybe not too surprising to see them kind of want to work with a consensus, just because, again, Joe Lubin-backed company, MetaMask, the cachet of it all. And so pretty interesting to see Linea so hot out of the gate in terms of the launch. Cue this one up right after, essentially, to be working with Swift on this prototype and designing it with them. And so don't want to read too much into it because, again, what does it really mean if we're all in this space to upheave what the old banking system's all about? But I do think, I mean, this is where we're going. This is the part of why this cycle is more exciting than other ones, because for a long time, it was a matter of when. It was, when is this going to happen? When is this going to happen? And now it's happening. So shout out to Linea for at least working on the prototype there, because it's been a long time coming. People have definitely been wondering, when is that going to come? And now Linea, being so new, early victory lap for them if they're able to work with Swift on that one. So that's a pretty interesting story. I think as we put all these pieces together, again, as we look at these things, you'll notice we trimmed down on the amount of DAT news that we have on today's show. Why? Because I'm kind of tired of covering DATs, to be honest with you. Mostly because it just becomes a question of, hey, how much you buying? How much is going on? What moves do we have to report here? I will flag one more, though, because this one has been on my radar for just kind of like which crypto has the momentum at its back. And I guess, if we're chatting Linea, getting a nice win there as an ETH layer 2, I'd be remiss if I didn't kind of bring up the Avalanche chart over here too, just because they're also enjoying a nice little new rally when it comes to these DATs. They, of course, announced the Mooch aligned one. He had his nice little victory lap on CNBC. If you watched our interview with the Mooch, you would have kind of already maybe potentially put the pieces together that one might have been coming because, he'd been talking about why he put his own fund on Avalanche. But when you look at things, a little bit of a maybe a false start, because a lot of these haven't really gotten to buying in bulk and sale. I'm pretty sure that there was another one that was floating around out there and still hasn't come through. And so if you're looking at one that hasn't had as much attention on the DAT narrative yet, I will say Avalanche is sitting there. And the other piece that we've also highlighted a lot recently is Solana. Gave back quite a bit of that DAT-filled boost after we had Cosmo on the show talking about Helios. Solana giving a bit of that back, but still a lot of dry powder among those DATs. And if you think about Q4, just throwing those out there, is that when momentum hits, it generally happens quickly. And if there is certainly one that has been overlooked. Relative to those, we had to highlight Avalanche there, just because, of course, disclosure, Avalabs being one of Trustless Media's backers. I'll throw that out there. But can also tell you it had nothing to do with us just including it because I didn't even put it on the list, Texas. So there you go. There is one last thing to highlight on today's show, and that is something we announced, speaking of Trustless, announced yesterday or last week, which I'm pretty excited about. We used the roll-up clip kind of by happenstance, mostly because that was the coolest clip we've seen for stablecoins to include in today's show. But excited to be announcing that we have worked on a new tool here at Trustless, and it's one that Coinage will be using. We've talked a lot with Jesse Pollock and the base team about the creator economy moving on chain. It's certainly something that they've been talking a lot about. And Trustless is working on an ad auction tool. So if you're noticing on today's show, in the bottom right corner of the screen, we've had an ad running, which is normally what we do. Shout out to all the great sponsors we've worked with in the past, whether it be Coinbase or Backpack or Akash or meanwhile Bitcoin Life Insurance, you name it, there's a bunch of them. But excited to be rolling out a tool that's going to let anyone bid on ad space, not just here in Coinage, but also at our friends over at Thinking Crypto, Tony Edward, and at the Rollup. And so we basically just chatted with them and said, hey, I think we're doing the same thing that you guys are doing. We're going around to partners. We kind of pitch people on what we do here, what we're all about. Sure, you guys do the same thing. But what if we had a tool where we could just kind of say, hey, look, our auction or our ad space is going to be up for auction. Anyone can come to our site and bid on it, figure out how much they want to pay, get their ad thrown in our newsletters, or have it thrown in our videos, and set a timer on like when those ads will run. And so that's what we're doing here. And I think it's pretty cool. I think it's pretty important because, again, normally the way that our business works is you got the YouTubes out there. You got the YouTubes taking the bulk of all the money that creators make. And I think this will be a cool experiment where people who understand the value of shows like what we do here at Coinage, what the Rollup does, what Thinking Crypto does, you can bid on their ad space. You can bid on the space. You can buy the NFT. You can use the NFT to run an ad in what you're watching right now. And we'll see how it goes. It's an experiment. But I want to give the Rollup a shout out, and I want to give Thinking Crypto a shout out for working with us on this initial tool. And bidding will begin this week. So if you want to support either one of us, all of us, you can bid at our site. If you didn't see the URL, it's auction.trustless.media. And it's built on Base for the time being. Excited to see this all play out because who knows what's going to happen. Not financial advice. If you're not in the game of bidding on ads, be careful out there. But I think it is kind of cool because it lets kind of these communities and value accrue. And we're doing it all on chain. So creator economy coming on chain. I'm super stoked to see what happens with this. And shout out to our partners at GBM who worked with us on this as well. The leaders in on-chain auctions helped spin the site up. And of course, they've done a lot of great auction work with other creators in the past, including Song a Dayman. And there's a lot of rewards that work with this system as well. If you get outbid, you actually earn. So it's a bid to earn protocol. It adds a bunch of different incentives. I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see how this all goes. But again, that's what we pride ourselves on here at Coinage, is throwing ourselves into the arena, getting our hands dirty. And who better than perhaps this trio of crypto content creators, Coinage, Thinking Crypto, and the Rollup, all coming together to throw our ad space on chain and give it a go. And so if you want to support, calling on you, the viewer, by all means, the auctions will begin tomorrow, Tuesday, and you can bid on the very first ads sold as NFTs on chain. Put your money where your mouth is. Support some creators out there. For now, though, I think that's going to do it for us on this Monday show as we recover not just from a wedding weekend, but also from trips back from around the world. But honored to have you join with us, as always, here on Coinage. You can head to coinage.media to catch all the big headlines around the world of Web3. It's going to be a crazy week, the shutdown stuff, as we said. But buckle up, Q4 just around the corner. A very strong time, as we saw. Hopefully, very strong time to kick us off in Up-tober. That's going to do it for us here at Coinage. I'm Zach Guzman, signing off. We'll see you again soon.